All right, welcome back. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to my guests from Melbourne, Australia, Nikki Tugano and Shane Duggan. Thank you for being here, both of you. I mean, Shane, you presented at PAFOW before and blew me away, honestly. You have a very noble, virtuous approach to this work that truly looks at the whole person, which I really admire and respect. And Nikki, we had the good fortune of meeting when I was there, I believe back in November of 2019, which in one respect seems like yesterday. But in any event, I really am excited that you two have joined up to share Measure What Matters. And beyond that, I'll let you two introduce yourselves and get on, and I'll join you in about 15 minutes or so. That work?
Sounds great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Great. Well, hello, and thanks so much for having us. Shane and I are really excited to be here. We'll be talking about measuring what matters from engagement to impact. But before I dive into the content, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about who we are. NeLo, we provide services that help businesses that people love to engage with and employees love to work for. And I have to say how excited Shane and I are about being asked to come back and speak at PAFOW. And that's very much because we believe that PAFOW is very aligned with our purpose and our core belief at NeLo. I'm pretty sure if you're here today, it's likely that you probably share the same belief. But let's test that theory and see how we go. For us, our purpose is in service of this belief. We believe in the powerful potential of businesses to have a positive impact on people's lives. And our vision is to create a future where all businesses provide positive value in every experience they create. Our mission to see this through is to help businesses create experiences that excite customers, inspire employees, and have more positive impact. And so at the highest level, feeling this sense of meaning and purpose is what matters. And that's why I couldn't help sharing what ours is. The sun or North Star that guides us is our core belief in the powerful potential of businesses to have a positive impact on people's lives. People gravitate towards businesses that have a clear, unequivocal, and positive impact on the world. A business they can be proud of, identify with, and advocate. And that's exactly how I feel about NeLo. Our means for realizing our mission is to help create businesses that excite, inspire, and have more positive impact. And our means for that is this experience framework made up of 5 principles: clarify purpose, determine value proposition, measure what matters, target strategy, and create alignment. And of course, for today, we'll be focusing in on and diving into measure what matters. Our approach to help businesses gain insights of their employees, their customers, as well as their stakeholders. We've all heard what gets measured gets managed, made famous traditionally by Peter Drucker, but according to the Drucker Institute, was never actually quoted by Drucker himself. What most people don't realize is that not only was it not said by him, but it's only half the story. And what's missed is the real intent behind it. The quote in full is, what gets measured gets managed, even when it's pointless to measure and manage it, and even if it harms the purpose of the organization to do so. So it was actually V.F. Ridgway who quoted this in his paper on dysfunctional consequences of performance measurements back in 1956, which leads me on to what Shane and I are here to present on today. Measuring what matters. We can all agree that things like employee engagement, revenue, absenteeism are widely adopted measures that get managed within business. However, business leaders don't often have an understanding of the key drivers that move the needle, nor do they have insight on the impact that those drivers have on business outcomes. That's why we work to help businesses create great experiences that have great impact. And for us, that means starting out with what matters and mapping out what those experiences are.
And really, we measure what matters first by understanding the landscape. Businesses are frankly awash with data, and it's getting worse. We know we need to measure, we know we can measure, but for many, that's where the conversation begins and ends. And it's really where the understanding of that conversation begins and ends. A lot of businesses have an outline like the one here, or several outlines, but very few have the ability to make out the details. If we think about some of the features on this landscape that I've got up at the moment, many businesses track all sorts of things like employee engagement, time on call, click-through rates, brand recognition, or my favorite vanity metric, net promoter score. Even though these dominate the measurement landscape, they often obscure the real experiences that employees, customers, and other stakeholders have of a company. They're used as proxies, but frankly, they're seldom actually connected up to the day-to-day of the business. Some businesses go even further. They measure everything, not only primary metrics, but secondary data derived from external measures for ever more sophisticated retargeting, brand building, announceables, the list goes on. Confused? Don't blame you. Advertising industry is perhaps the most guilty of this in recent times. They create advertising to win awards and impress rival agencies rather than to actually help their clients, and their metrics do the same thing. Consultants are maybe talking, hopefully we're not one of these, might be even worse. Bombarding clients with reams of data that tell businesses what their competitors are doing, but give very little insight as to what's going to help move the needle for that actual business. The problem is, no matter how much data you have, no matter how much analysis, if it's not connected up to something bigger than itself, it's just a pretty landscape a ways off in the distance. What we keep coming back to, and what we must come back to, frankly, is that if we're going to measure what matters, we need to know why it matters. What is the data? What are the insights? What is the strategy? And what is it actually in service of? And how will it help us get there? Too many businesses focus on the landscape and they forget the sun. Then they wonder why the road they've built is taking them in the wrong direction. A closer look at the psychology behind human behavior actually gives us some insights into why this is the case. The experiences we create as a business are actually central to everything we do. If we look down at our landscape from above, we can see that all those mountains and ridges are actually just touch points. That is, the ways that customers, employees, and other stakeholders come into contact with the business. Looking at it this way, we can see that some are bigger, some are smaller, but really it's their relationship and the way they get joined up that actually gives them meaning. We can think about this as a series of concentric circles, each incorporating and influenced by the others. The touch points represent all of the interactions that any given person, employee, customer, stakeholder can have of the business. These form experiences, which drive beliefs about what they think about us, which in turn guides their behaviors toward us. I'm sure, and I sort of reflect on people here who worked in telco call centers, and I'm sure they can tell us stories about how experiences of a product influence beliefs toward how they call up the call center, and behaviors as well, sorry. If we multiply this across every customer, employee, and stakeholder that comes into contact with a business, the impact is actually profound. So how does this work in practice? We measure what matters by identifying the experiences that have the biggest positive impact across customers, employees, or other stakeholders. And the way I really want to illustrate this to you today in the next 5 minutes or so is to tell you a quick story about a client that we worked with in the service space. So, looking at their recent feedback, everything focused on how the application process took too long, that customers and staff felt the website was tricky or clunky, and that customers weren't kept up to date. So logically, the suggested strategy was all about what digital systems could be put in place to speed up applications, how do we make the web portal more efficient, how do we track length of time to outcome, how do we provide clearer information. The result, before we came to work with the client, they had spent several $100,000 on process and workflow improvements, a new website, dedicated SEO manager, as well as getting some of their most senior and experienced staff to lead a webinar series, to be put out online. However, The reviews were still pretty mixed bag. Engagement in the webinars was more or less non-existent. And although application timelines improved slightly, the effect on overall satisfaction was marginal. When we came in, we flipped it. We asked the client what they wanted to be known for, what actually inspired them to do the work that they do. They told us really clearly, given the complexities of their industry, the most important thing was that they are trusted, that they felt people were being supported by experts in the field. We work with them to help understand how customers and employees interact with the business, their actual touch points. Then, what are the moments that matter and what is their impact? Not just on their own, but in relation to each other and in relation to their desire to be trusted experts in the field. Now, I know you're looking at what looks like half a presentation here. I can't really go into too much detail, but broadly speaking, the wheel in the center, the donut, represents all of the factors that influence trust and satisfaction across the business. The colors represent themes, and each theme has multiple factors within it, and you can see some of those illustrated there. If you look really closely at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that all of that attention on processing time actually is one of the smallest factors impacting overall trust. All of that focus on the website, well, that's only a little bit more significant, about double, but there were more factors in that. When we helped the client to meaningfully connect with their customers, what we found was the most important moments, the things that really mattered, were where the customers felt that staff were showing empathy and understood how important the process was. Those two factors alone made up over a quarter of the variance. That meaning they made up over a quarter of the variance in how trusted they felt as a brand. By partnering with the client to focus on building empathy and trust among their staff across everything they do, we've been able to have an impact on the things that actually matter to customers. Going beyond easy to measure metrics like processing times to things that actually move the needle is hard, but frankly, not doing it is harder. Ultimately, it usually ends up meaning splashing cash on the next big, exciting, innovative thing rather than where it will actually help the business achieve its purpose. Now I'll hand back to Nikki.
Thanks, Shane. Today, we've focused on measuring what matters, but done in isolation, the impact can only be so much. Measuring what matters forms part of a greater system and approach. And so this is where we begin to also talk about some of the elements within NeLo's service that we cover. But starting with clarifying purpose, our first principle to creating impactful experience. So a purpose that gives direction to your business and a bigger picture for people to connect their actions to. Second, in determining value propositions, allowing businesses to clearly state the value they have on their customers, employees, society, and the environment in order to have a positive impact and stand out from their competition. Measuring what matters is obviously what we've covered through today in terms of how we can really identify what experiences or touch points are having the biggest impact on business outcomes. Our fourth one is target strategy. Targeting strategy on moments of disproportionate value allows businesses to quickly and effectively improve the positive impact they have on employees, customers, and stakeholders. And finally, in creating alignment. Effectively developing and delivering value propositions across different parts of the business can have some positive impact. However, businesses that have truly great impact make their senior teams accountable for overall experience. They also have teams and roles dedicated to it, and ultimately drive congruent, positive experience across customers, employees, and all stakeholders. And so that's our NeLo's employee experience framework, What we'd like to actually do is invite you to think about how purpose works across your organization and to see if you're measuring what matters by taking NeLo's free experience diagnostic. So what I might ask is if Shane can share the link in the chat, but also obviously you can use the QR code to get the link up. A quick survey to assess the experience that your people are having within the business. And so that brings me to the end of the presentation. I'd love to say massive appreciation and thanks to PAFOW, to Al, and also to Lara that's invited us back here again. Shane, do you want to say a few words before we wrap up?
No, just excited to well, now we've got Al back, so excited to have a chat and answer any questions people might have.
I did it.
You did it. Nice, good job. We're glad it worked.
So, the idea that people have a purpose is kind of how do I put it? I don't want to say presumptuous because that's too kind of from a critical place, but people have not created the space by which to explore their purpose many times. And so, and organizations similarly have not, apart from a leadership level, maybe not haven't communicated as well. So and the reason I say that, not from a critical place, is that there's great opportunity to line up with intention and the language and framing that I put, intention and appropriate response. And that's what I see in you putting this together, is that if you're really clear on your intention, and the clearer you can be personally, potentially at a team level, and certainly at organizational level, the clarity in terms of the appropriate response, the appropriate data, the measures that matter, all that will be more clear. But unless that upfront work is done and commitment made to it, then it's not going to happen. So my question to you, Shane, first off, there's tons of literature, academic and in the business literature, around the value of purpose. Purpose Economy is Behind Me by Aaron Hurst, and founder of the Taproot Foundation. So it's unmistakable, yet it's been a miss. It's kind of been out there. So my pointed question again is, why don't you think this is a more widely adopted way to guide not only cultural development efforts, but what we measure?
Yeah, a great question, and there's a lot there.
Yeah.
I think it's actually conflation. Mm-hmm. I think there's been too much conflation of purpose on the one hand with passion on the other, as though they're somehow the same thing. And so we've spent a really, really long time telling young people in particular that you need to find your passion, you need to go out, and that's what you need to be seeking. And then that gets turned into, well, find your passion means find your purpose. And then those two terms get used interchangeably. But there's actually a massive distinction between the two. And really, and then at the same time, the other thing that's been happening is that more and more work is being atomized, and people are feeling disconnected from their colleagues. They're feeling disconnected from what the organization actually sets out to achieve. And then the third thing is that business leaders kind of often don't ask. They go away to leadership retreats and they set the purpose for a business, or they get together in a room and they go, okay, well, what are we going to do? Or they might bring in some of their executive, but they don't take the risk of actually going to their people and asking and saying, what do you value about this work? What is important to you about this work? One of the most amazing things in that case study that I shared, and I can't tell you the industry or anything like that, but on the outside, it's not what you would call, sexy work. It's not an industry that you go, well, it's not a Google or an Apple industry where you go, wow, you make an iPad. But everybody we spoke to was passionate about the work that they did. Everybody we spoke to really felt that they help customers achieve something really important to them in their lives. Or their clients, and that was incredibly meaningful. And so that there is a really latent opportunity for that business to tap into. The more they can tap into that, they can actually connect people to what matters to them, so that ultimately purpose is about feeling that every day you get up, you have something to do that means something in the world.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, and inherent in that, correct me if I'm wrong, is moving beyond the assumption that people are just going to, understand the purpose, number one, and know, that there's a connection there, that staying connected to purpose requires work. It requires conversation. It requires potentially measurement that reinforce, whether or not the connection is truly sticky. Would you echo that? And if so, is that part of the value that you at NeLo provide, is creating the space to identify purpose and what to do to keep it alive?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the, I mean, I took a little bit of a soft jab there at Net Promoter Score and employee engagement as a metric. And it's because I don't think it's tangible enough. I think engagement is such an abstract concept. I mean, they've been trying to solve for it in education for, near on 100 years, and they're no closer. It's just not connected enough to the work that people do. So if we're going to build measurements around purpose, it needs to be connected to the stuff I do every day.
Right.
And I do think that it's possible to do that at every level of an organization. And I don't just mean that in the sense of telling the NASA story of the cleaner saying I send people to the moon, though that's a really nice way of thinking about that relationship.
Right. Hey, Nikki, I'm going to ask you a question. Can you see us, Nikki? All right. I think we might have lost Nikki.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nikki, can you see us? No, I don't think she can. So I'm going to stick with you, Shane, in the hope that she comes back. If not, then I will. Hopefully she does. So yes. Anyway, so I do have, in our limited time here, I do have this, and it might sound self-serving to you, is if you all are helping organizations create the space, and there's the idea that you're going to go and do an offsite and you're going to check that box, and then after the fact that, okay, we've done that work. But it's also the idea that we're creating systems and processes, measurements, to your point about measures that matter, that are reinforcing this over and over again. So when that happens, then potentially you're selecting technologies that are going to reinforce what you want to get done, whereas many organizations are taking what I would call a technology or data-centric approach, and they're trying to fit it into, a round hole when they got a square peg. Would you echo that? And if so, how would you coach people to, hey, this is not just a one-off, this is an ongoing commitment that's going to take some time and effort?
Yeah, I think the technology question is a really hard one, particularly because a lot of technology companies now go out of their way to provide such extensive solutions, but those solutions require buy-in. I mean, we were talking with a client the other day around CRM, and the one thing that they said around a particular CRM provider, I won't name names, is, oh, if you choose that one, you have to go all in. And so I think the reason for that technologically sort of determinate approach or technology first approach is because so many of these solutions are actually kind of closed systems. They really require you to buy all in. I think that can work, but only if within the organization there's a clear understanding of what that particular technology connects to, how it helps us do our work, achieve our work, and achieve the actual purpose that we want to get to. We talk at NeLo, we talk about purpose in a very tangible way. Yeah. But purpose is all about those connected up layers. We didn't talk about it today, but those connected up layers from everything from your values, how you drive, to your short and medium and longer term missions for the business, the more strategic things that you're engaging with that may include certain technologies or may not, to your vision, what it is that you actually want to achieve in the industry, and how you see the industry operating at its best, to a more driving belief of what this connects up to and how it does good for humanity. And it's too easy to just get stuck up here and just go focus on the intangible. We want to be the most loved or whatever. Right. And forget about the fact that it's also about our behaviors. It's about what we do in the world, in the day-to-day, and how we connect that up. Right. So technology has a part to play in that, but in an organization where there's buy-in, it doesn't necessarily drive the conversation.
Got it. Now, I love your narrative on this, and as we start to wrap, and hopefully magically Nikki will be able to join us, because I did have my question to her is, as you well know, what we're talking about, like purpose-driven work, resonates with younger professionals more than those of my generation, where I call it, I grew up in the suck it up generation. You have a job, there's work to do, just suck it up and do it. I don't want to hear about your wants, purpose, passions, desires, just you got a job. However, young people, particularly high value talent, they got options and purpose matters. So is that part of the realization that the leaders that you're working with have, that, hey, we have to get on top of this or else we're not going to be able to compete for the talent that we want?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're also, and I just got a sort of back channel from Nikki. She's been dropped off the speaker's side of it somehow. But anyway, I'll speak on her behalf.
Okay.
I think it's partly that. It's partly we need to keep up. There is a war for high quality talent. But the other side of it, a lot of the leaders we speak to are not, millennials. They're a fair bit older. And honestly, they're refreshed. They're refreshed by being able to talk about this stuff. They're actually all in, because a lot of them wish that this had been around when they were being told to suck it up when they first got their start. They wish that they were able to actually connect to the organization rather than just work themselves to death, in the lower rungs of it. And so I think the misnomer would be to say, oh, we're doing this because we feel we have to. I think they're doing it because they feel inspired by it. And for many leaders, this is their opportunity to really make a difference to the world of work. And frankly, many of them, or well, at least the ones we're working with, are grabbing it with both hands.
Well, if I were in that role, I'd be grabbing it with both hands, because there's definitely been better ways. We wanted better ways, and now we're at this stage where the better ways of doing it are not only a nice to have, they're critical, particularly with remote work. And I don't have to tell you that. So again, keep doing what you're doing. Please give my best to Nikki if I'm not able to talk with her, after this session, because anyway, I'm going to have to find some time to spend with her, on camera, that we know we can interact, because she has a great narrative and she's super bright and has a great career, and I'm congratulations on attracting her to NeLo. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really thank you so much for this. I'm disappointed that you didn't get to speak with Nikki, because frankly she's the more interesting one of the two of us. So
we'll have to do it again. We'll do it sometime soon.
Do it again.
Yeah. All right. Well, be well. Thank you both, and keep doing the great work that you're doing. All right.
Thanks, Al. Thanks so much.
Bye.